Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm joined today by Daniel Hamilton Charlton from Property Searches Direct. Hi, Daniel. How are you doing?
Why I set up Property Searches Direct was to give the home moving audience choice. We looked at the pinch points of some of the delays, some of the catastrophic delays in the conveyancing process, and thought, is there a better way? Just Direct came about. And we listened to the market. We looked at what we were doing. We've engaged with people moving home and asked them what their wants and needs are, what their appetite was to actually get involved in the process. And we were quite surprised at how engaged they were, how much appetite they had for knowledge, and how much they didn't know that the things that they weren't being presented with could actually impact on their timescales quite significantly. So
we need to, as agents, understand that when people are moving home, the delays that are caused to them can be the difference between them getting the next move of their dream or not. Financially, it can make all the difference and it can be catastrophic. The other thing is that when we look to sort of try and take the pain out of the moving process, if you were to ask somebody how their house sale went, they'll never tell you that, oh, it just took ages for us to find a buyer, or the agent's photos weren't very good, or anything that the agent did up until that point. They would always talk to you about the conveyancing process, because that is the bit that they remember was most painful.
I would say, that the conveyancing market has definitely shown its own cracks over this last year. I think if you pressure test something, you can see what sort of gives. And I think the conveyancing market has definitely shown where the cracks are. Because, as a search supplier, we get screamed at. We get screamed at by the people moving home, because the estate agent said, oh, it's all the conveyancer's fault. And the conveyancer said it's all the search agent's fault. And we're going, hold on just a minute, right? You put the property on the market in January. You sold it in February. The searches were ordered in April. And we're now in May, getting close to June, and you're screaming at us.
Yeah.
There's a limit, there's a limit to how much we can take. And that's probably why, well, it is one of the reasons why we said there has to be a better way, because we don't like being screamed at. And actually, when you explain the process to a client and say, had you been given the opportunity to know the impact that this would have on your transaction, had you been given the opportunity to make a difference, would you have done so? The answer is absolutely yes, I would. The fact that every transaction has a deadline, forget June, forget the SDLT deadlines, every transaction has a deadline. Someone's moving for a reason. They're getting pregnant. So they're pregnant, they're getting married, they're divorcing, someone's died, their job relocation, their new schools, everyone's got a
full
deadline.
gamut, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And when someone comes to you as an agent and says, the first thing you'd ask someone is, why are you moving? Why are you moving? Surely that's on everyone's agenda. Why are you moving? They'll come out with a reason. And that reason has some sort of time mark stamped into it that they, whether you believe it or not, are working to it. That everyone has an expectation of time scale. Why doesn't the conveyancer talk about the pitfalls sooner? Simply because if you ask a conveyancer how long is this going to take, they're going to say, there are so many third parties that we're reliant on, I couldn't possibly tell you. If it was just down to us, we'd have it done in X amount of time, but they can't. They're never, ever, ever going to commit to a timescale. They just won't. And the ones that do are literally hanging themselves out to dry when it doesn't get met, because you told me it would happen by now. So no conveyancer is ever going to do that. So we've got to look at the component parts that are controllable. That's all we can do. We can all look at the bits that we can control. What can the conveyancer do to make themselves more effective? What can the client do to help out to make themselves more effective? What can the agent do to help out to make things more effective? And expectations that a client might have on the 27th of August. So today's the 27th of August, David. Someone comes into your office or meets one of your guys and says, I want to move before Christmas. 27th of August, what do you reckon?
So it's doable, isn't it?
It should be, shouldn't it? Should be really doable.
Yeah.
So if we consider that on the 27th of August, you're in an area where the local authority search is taking 40 working days. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we order the search today, that search will come back on the 25th of October. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good, doesn't it? So let's bear in mind that today's the 27th of August. You take a property to the market. You promise those people they're going to move before Christmas. Oh yeah, get your Christmas stuff out of the loft, put it in boxes. You know, you're going to be moving it, celebrating your new house. And you take 2 weeks to sell it. Now, let's face it, we're coming into a market where things are going to slow down. You may not sell a property overnight. There's not a great deal of stock, but there's not a great deal of appetite either. So we're going into a slightly cooler period. It may actually be normal as a market, but you take 2 weeks to sell the property. That client, your buyer, takes the end of that week or so to actually complete their paperwork, formally instruct that conveyancer. Now, the Conveyancing Association said that on average, a conveyancer won't order a local authority search until about 6.5 weeks into the transaction. Okay, so 6.5 weeks later, the searches are actually ordered. When do you think those searches come back?
So,
I'll tell you, 10th of January.
Right. So that's missing that Christmas deadline.
That's totally missing the deadline. And that's 27th of August in an area where your searches are taking 40 working days. And I can tell you now that they'll come back on the 10th of January. No one really thinks about what better looks like if what you do works. So when you look at the conveyancing process, it is a whole load of ticking boxes. And if you scream at a conveyancer and say, do it quicker, they will simply say, I've still got the same number of boxes to tick. How can I possibly do it quicker? So what we're saying is, well, why don't we just take a few of those boxes away? When a sale gets agreed, you're right. People tend to look at conveyancers at the point of need. I now need a solicitor. I should now put a name on a memorandum of sale, and I better go away and make sure they're instructed. And they assume that that process will be really quick. You know, the minute they pick up the phone to conveyance and the conveyancer says, yes, I'll act for you, and they put that name on the memorandum of sale, surely they can just act for me. Well, the reality is they can't. So we've been building what we call get legally prepared pages that enable estate agents to point their clients at an online resource that guides them through some steps that they really should consider getting to grip with. The first one is, of course, provide us with an ID/AML report. And as estate agents, that's an administrative burden. You know, you've got to identify these people. You've probably got to fund some sort of solution. And we've just said, look, let the client go to a page that's all branded yours and let them buy an ID/AML reporting solution that they can do remotely. And the first thing you'll hear about them is a completed report in your secure dashboard. Fill out your protocol forms. Right? You don't need to instruct the conveyancer to do this. They're there. Start filling out your property information forms.
Yeah.
And as an agent, I'll be having a conversation with them, asking them to get on and do that. Why? There's information in there that's pertinent to me as your agent marketing it. I need to know about boundary disputes or enabling disputes or any challenges you've got with the property or building regs or the rest of it. And your property information form will guide you through some fairly simple to answer questions, but ask you to amass paperwork to support the completion of that form.
Yeah,
that's
really important.
It is really important. It's vital to it. And people that don't understand how vital the completion of those protocol forms are really missing the point. There's no point in or saying you've instructed a solicitor and a memorandum of sale going out and everyone doing their sales progression if the client hasn't filled out their paperwork. Logbooks are something we're focusing on big time. Logbooks are not only a great marketing opportunity, and I'll touch on that in a moment, but logbooks are a vital digital engaging environment for home owners or investors or anyone interested in property to collate all of their paperwork in a digital environment so that it's there for when they're thinking of selling. The great thing is there's 28 million properties in the UK, and all of them have been digitized. You as an estate agent can brand your logbook on all of your postcode areas, and then you can invite your market to go and claim their logbook. Now, whether they're thinking of selling or not is a complete irrelevance at this stage.
That's a great idea.
But when they claim their logbook, you might just say to them, interested in property values, interested in just keeping up with market trends, interested. Everyone's interested in property. Everyone's interested in property value, even if they're not thinking of selling.
Yeah.
But when they log into their logbook and claim it as an owner, it tells them when it was last transacted. The agent's details are there, and you can change the status to settled. It's your forever home. You could change the status to thinking of selling, or actively selling, or doing it up. And that status then is shared with the estate agent. So they can look on their dashboard. They can look at all the claimed digital environments. They can see all the statuses that have been set. And of course, the client that's looking in the logbook who is thinking of selling, if they change their status of thinking of selling, first thing it says is, right, here's the agent. Do you want to come out and ask them to come out and value your property? And while you're about it, here are some things that you really should be thinking about getting to grips with. You should be thinking about delivering an IDAML report to this agent to tell them you're serious about selling.
I love it. I love it. Show me where to sign. This is great. This is great.
So
where have you been all my life?
Yeah, here.
I love the concept of it. And I also love that it's more than just a sort of an online digital Google Drive you can shove things into, but it's also an active, it's a live document, isn't it? It's a live environment that they can get updates on their property. And if they are thinking of selling, then very quickly the agent is in that loop. And for a proactive agent to get hold of this concept of logbooks and start to market that to their town and their environment, I think it's superb. Perhaps it didn't start out this way, but it becomes a prospecting opportunity really for an agent as well.
That was the idea really behind it. We see your success as an agent as our success. If no one sells houses, no one's buying searches, right? But if we can provide marketing tools to progressive agents that want to drive change and want to take market share, then why on earth wouldn't we support that activity? And in areas where we talked about 30 plus working day council areas where we're saying, actually, if you left the process to the status quo, if you left it to the buyer's conveyancer, is a client coming to the market on the 27th of August going to move before Christmas? All right, left to the status quo, the answer is no in Worcester City Council, Wiltshire Council, West Oxfordshire, Waverley Borough, Tunbridge and Malling, Tewkesbury, Tamworth, Sunderland, Stafford, South Staffordshire, South Cambridgeshire, Salford City, Royal Borough, Greenwich, Rosendale Borough, Rochdale Metropolitan, Plymouth City, Northumberland City, North West Leicestershire, North Warwickshire, Newcastle upon Tyne, Mansfield District, London boroughs of Redbridge, Havering, Hackney, Camden, Barnet, Lichfield District, Lewes District, High Peak Borough, Gateshead Metropolitan, Forest of Dean, Flintshire County, Durham County, Dorset Councils, Weymouth, Portland Borough, West Dorset, Purbeck and North Dorset, Cotswold District, Central Bedfordshire, Cannock Chase, Cambridge City, Barnley Borough, Bridgend County, and Boston Borough Council.
Wow, that sounded like the train line from hell. The best solutions benefit not only the agent or not only the homeowner, but everybody involved in the process. And I think that your view on things and your solution does indeed deliver value to everybody. So it's buyer, it's seller, it's even somebody that hasn't yet got around to thinking about selling their house, but you're getting them prepared for the process. So I think this is going to deliver an immense amount of value. And again, Daniel is looking for and interested in engaging with agents that are progressive, that have got a willingness to help pitch in and change attitudes in our industry. And God knows there's a few of those out there, aren't there? A sale for you. But you shouldn't take it for granted, because if we start this earlier, we get there sooner.
But what will happen is the agent will pat themselves on the back. I did a fantastic job. When the wheels came off, it wasn't my problem. Well, that shouldn't be an excuse anymore. You should be saying, let's make it my job to highlight any concerns that could possibly derail this transaction, and not leave it to the conveyancer to be perceived to be messing it up for you, your boots. If you're in a hurry, You want to get things done. Or more importantly, as a seller, I want to see commitment from my buyer, ask them to buy their searches.
Yeah.
What better commitment can you get than them buying the searches for your property?